Welcome back to my happy little corner of the internet, where today I will be talking about Everwinter's Fires of Vengeance. Now, this was my second most anticipated book of the year, first being Rhythm of War, which I have already started reading, but this is about Fires of Vengeance, and this was a highly anticipated sequel to Rage of Dragons. Now, Rage of Dragons, I do have an older review for. I read it earlier this year. Probably not that great of a review. I wasn't very good at this whole thing yet. But I absolutely loved Rage of Dragons. Uh, Everybody's major complaints about the training sequences and too much action and Tao being too good at things. I disagree with most of them, and I loved all those parts of it. So if you're looking for an action-packed fantasy world that's light on the world building, but fantastic at a precise story following a main character, read that book and then read this book, because this basically built on everything as I was expecting it to, and it is a fantastic follow-up to one of my favorite books that I've read all year long. Okay, so this will be spoiler-free for Fires of Vengeance, but it will contain some spoilers for Rage of Dragons to set up things that happen in this book. I'm not going to spoil any major crazy things like character deaths or whatever, but there will be some things from book one that I feel like are necessary to explain for the setup of this book. So, like I said, if you know anything about me and my love for Rage of Dragons and how much I battle for it on the internet against all you haters that don't like Tao and Rage of Dragons, this met all of my expectations and more. It basically did exactly what I wanted it to do, which was keep the pretty much breakneck speed of book one, build on Izihogo and the world building and atmosphere a little bit more. And I really wanted to see Tao take another step and not just be driven by revenge and hatred and wanting to just kill. That was one of the major complaints of book one that I can kind of understand is, I mean, you're either going to like Tao or you're going to hate him. If you hate him, the book's not going to work for you. If you like him, you're probably cheering for him the entire time, as I am, and you're going to love the story. Having said that, there are definitely moments in book one where Tao is just kind of an idiot because he's so driven by this one single note ambition that he refuses to see reason. Now, that kind of plays a role in book two, but I'm happy to say here that he's grown a lot since book one. From the ending of book one to the ending of book two, he definitely is reined in a little bit of his hatred and inner burning. It's still there. Don't get me wrong, it's still there. But he's not completely tunnel visioning every scenario of, I'm going to get what I want, everybody shut up, this is going to happen. He does that a little bit, but he is willing to let people sort of not control him, but kind of influence his opinions. He's not just doing everything for himself and screw everybody else. He very much is listening to people around him and kind of learning from his mistakes of book one, which really was a story about how this hatred and vengeance inside of you could really lead you down a dark path and maybe not be the best way through your life and to get to the goal that you want. So this plot picks up directly after the ending of the first book. Now, if you know where the first book ended, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you are with these two characters. You're with Tao, of course, and you're with Queen Siora. Now, Queen Siora is the other main character of this book, essentially. She obviously gets less time than Tao. It is still very much his story. But Queen Siora, you get to know a lot better, and she is growing to be a very prevalent and present female character in this universe. I feel like she sort of stepped into the role or position of Zuri from book one, but she is a much better character than that. And I mean that in the sense of she is the main female focus of the book, and she is a much more interesting character than Zuri was in book one. And overall, just I'm looking forward to seeing what this character has at her disposal. She is sort of ruthless. She can be cutthroat at times. She doesn't take shit from anybody. And that is because, if you remember the prologue from the book, from Rage of Dragons, that follows Queen Taifa, who was kind of like, when everybody says, oh, there's no dragons in Rage of Dragons, it's because the opening prologue, there are dragons, and she is essentially controlling dragons and calling down fire. and then it kind of goes away for most of the book. Queen Siora is Typha's daughter, and Queen Siora's sister Essie also claims to be the queen of the capital city of Palm, and that is kind of what brings together our main plot and story. Is it's the continuation of Tao's revenge tale, obviously, that he's trying to take revenge on basically all the nobles at this point for really just keeping the lessers held down and kind of their tyrannical rule over them. So in addition to Tao's, revenge plotline that is still ongoing, him, Siora, the lessers, and their whole group of people are working to overthrow and take the city of Palm, which is the capital, where her sister, Siora's sister Essie, is basically ruling as the queen. So they're kind of vying for power against each other to be queen of the Omehi people. And basically they're doing this whole thing to take control, get back in power with Tao as her champion, while dealing with other things at play here. So Fires of Vengeance does a fantastic job of expanding on the magic system and the entire use of Isihogo at, the underworld from book 1, where Tao went and fought demons for countless number of hours to basically become better than any warrior that's ever lived. And that's how he got so good. So don't tell me that it was BS or he powered up too quickly or any of that nonsense, okay? The dual wielding thing, sure. Somebody probably would have picked up 2 swords before him. But his power level from Isihogo was completely legitimate and earned. And I will go to my deathbed believing that. So Evan Winter here in book 2 did a fantastic job of expanding on that was built up in book 1, and it is very prevalent here. It really grows the story and background of Isihogo's existence and kind of explains a little bit more in depth what's really going on there and the possibility of maybe Tao being there so much, or the gifted being there so much, might not be a good thing. I mean, they even said in book 1, if you pull the power of it, you could actually die there and in real life. It's sort of got like a Dark One being held by these like seals in Wheel of Time kind of vibe, where if you overuse the underworld, it's almost like you're kind of like thinning the veil between the two worlds. So there's a lot of potential there of things happening if you overuse it or overstep your bounds, things like that. So that's expanded on a lot in this book, which is super cool. The overall plot obviously is relatively straightforward because Tao, Siora, Hadith, Uduak, Jabari, everybody from book 1 is continuing on this quest to essentially overthrow the nobles, kind of reestablish society, while dealing with the overall threat of the Zadine, I believe it's called, who, the sort of native people to this world that they're in this constant battle with. And this really expands on the Cull as well, which I have a feeling is going to play a major role in future books to come. So with the plot and story out of the way, characters, I've already spoken about Tao a little bit, spoken about Siora a little bit. Jabari is surprisingly interesting in this book. While not really having that much time in it, he's pretty impactful in the scenes that he's in. Hadith, or Hadith, however you pronounce that name, plays a massive role in this book. He's probably the third most important character on Tao's kind of like side. You also get interesting POV, not necessarily chapters, but you do get scenes of like Odyssey and Essie, which kind of helps show both sides to the story. You're not just getting Tao's side of it. So Evan Winter did a great job of expanding these side characters and really bringing the scope kind of in scope, for lack of a better word, while not just having the very streamlined and concise story of book 1. This has a very streamlined and concise story as well, but it does a good job of keeping you on that main path, but also kind of like giving you information here and there of, the underworkings of Umlaba, or how the underworld really works in Isihogo, expanding on the Zadine, their background a little bit, learning more about the world that you're actually taking place in, and I have a feeling it's going to be a much bigger scope of a story going into books 3 and book 4. You also have some newcomers to the cast as well, which are Asit and Ramia, who are Queen Siora's handmaidens. They show up at a certain point in this book, and they're definitely kind of mysterious and interesting characters to follow as well. So Evan is really doing a good job of expanding the cast and bringing these other side characters more to the forefront, so it's not just Tao that you're focusing on. As far as pacing, obviously this is paced beautifully in my opinion, much like book one. It is pretty much a nonstop action thrill ride all the way throughout. There's no fat to the story. It has a very so this is kind of like pacing and writing style. His prose is very approachable. There's no flowery text to this. This is very straightforward, visceral language. The combat scenes are intense and exciting. The dude can write one hell of a combat scene. And the pacing is just, it's almost breakneck speed at some points, where you're going from one battle to another battle, or, you know, the lows, like you can kind of take like a sip of water and then keep going. This is not like a Wheel of Time where you have like a big battle and then you have 40 chapters of like talking. This is very much like, okay, let's have a conversation. Oh shit, we're in another battle. So there's a lot of that, which is right up my alley. I absolutely love it. So, I mean, the pacing, you're going to fly through these books. It is about 500 or so pages, but I mean, some of them are pretty short. I don't think the word count is necessarily that high. It reads very quickly. Like I said, there's not a lot of fat here. There's not a lot of description. This is a very fast-paced and fast read as well. And the last point, necessarily I don't want to talk about, I've kind of touched on this briefly, the atmosphere and the world building. So, like I said earlier, the atmosphere of the story is very much, there's not a lot of description, okay? You kind of just are going with the story. You're following Tao and the characters. That's the most important thing. There are some descriptions here and there, but the atmosphere is really just, you have a general feel of the setting, kind of the landscape roughly. He does do a great job of world building in the sense of showing you more of the terrain and leading up to this capital city that they're on. He talks about the roar, which is like the main like body of water. The whole thing with Isihogo is expanded on a lot. That's a big focus of this book. So he is definitely stepping up his game in the world building aspect and really giving us more meat on the bone when it comes to this world. Whereas like book one, I kind of felt like it was almost entirely absent. It was really just an action story, and that's what you're there for. And that's still definitely the focus here, but he's also expanding everywhere else and giving me more of like the background and the lore of this world that I really wanted to know more of. The last thing that I'll talk about for this is, I guess, kind of the tone of the story. There was a certain point in the story where things got very dark, and Everwinter basically stepped into some like grim dark type of shit at a certain point in this book, which I loved. It was it was like Poppy War levels of kind of violence at a certain point, which was great. Some of the characters in this are completely ruthless, and they don't care who you are. Like, they are violent to a T, and there is just nothing getting in their way of their violence. I'll leave it at that. But it was exactly what I wanted from this book. I thought this was a brilliant sequel to book one. I cannot wait for book three. The way that this book ends kind of sets up perfectly what's coming in book three, and I want it now. Having read Rage of Dragons only months ago, and then having the sequel come out now, kind of spoiled me, because now we actually have to wait, a year or two, however long. I don't know when book 3 is coming out. Hopefully I can get an arc for it. That would be awesome. But this book's great. I loved it. If I had to rate it, I would rate it really high. We'll say that. This is exactly what I wanted from a sequel. So if you all enjoyed Rage of Dragons, you are going to love this book. I have no doubt about that. If you hated Rage of Dragons, you're not going to like this, I don't think, honestly. It's not for everybody. I think it's super approachable, but again, if you can't get into Tao's main character, you don't like how reckless he is, or you just don't like really action-filled fantasy, then this isn't for you, and that's perfectly fine. But I loved it, and that's my review. Like and subscribe, as always. Join the Patreon if you do want to support the channel and what I do here. This is, of course, always optional, but always appreciated. Do hop in Discord, though. We are continuing to grow and having fantastic conversations on a daily basis. And that's going to wrap up this one, guys. So until next time, keep reading.